Chapter 39. Careless Whisper. Have you ever looked at someone and thought, damn, I want to spend my whole life with you? It's crazy that I'm feeling this now as I watched him open the front door of his home. I couldn't help it. Everything Arthur did made me fall deeper in love every day. Whenever I am with him, I am suddenly back to the fairy tale I've created for myself. I am Cinderella once again, and he is my handsome prince. After all, Arthur was handsome in every possible way. He was handsome from the depth of his eyes to the gentle expressions of his voice. He was handsome from his generous opinions to the touch of his hand upon my own. I loved the way his voice quickened when he sparkled with a new idea, or was so enjoying one of mine that he lost himself for a moment and forgot the mask he wore for others. However, Arthur was more than just a handsome prince for me. It seemed that he truly loved me. Finally, after all those years of being invisible, undervalued and used, here was someone who saw my true worth. He fell in love with me as Sandra and Sandy. He loved me for me, and I don't think I'll ever be able to receive this kind of love again. After you, milady, he said playfully as a smile formed my lips. He said the same thing that night when I first came to his house. I bowed my head slightly as I did a courtesy to play along with him. Thank you, good sir, I responded cheerfully before I stepped inside his home. The house was welcoming from the open door to the wide hallway. In the hallway there were paintings placed on the wall. I wonder if these were Arthur's. My eyes widened in surprise as I gaped at my surroundings. The wide living room had a large chandelier in the middle of it. At the left is where his huge wall-mounted TV is located. Beneath that you could see a modern fireplace. At the opposite side of the TV, you could see his expensive-looking couches and coffee table situated. It still amazes me how rich Arthur is, considering that he acts so humble all of the time. The other side of the living room caught my attention. Up on the walls were photographs of Arthur and his parents, so obviously loved. You look like your dad, I told him as I eyed their similarities. He just nodded in agreement. Now you know where I got my looks from. He winked at me. I just laughed at him. By the way, you haven't told me anything yet about your mom and dad, I asked curiously as I examined their photos on the wall. I loved looking at these photos and seeing how Arthur looked throughout the years. A smile crept to my face as I looked through each one in amusement. He never had an ugly face, he was always very handsome. Well, there's not much to tell. We're just like any other family, he stated nonchalantly. I wanted to pry more into his family, but we were cut off by someone. I turned around to see Clara walking towards us. I smiled at her, however, she didn't return the gesture. She looked at Arthur questioningly. Clara, you remember Sandra? Arthur gestured to me as her eyebrows raised in confusion. I reached out to shake her hands and she just shook it coldly. It was then it dawned on me that I came here as Sandy, not as Sandra. I shook my head at the sudden realization. We actually met before, I'm Sandy. Her confused expression turned into surprise as she eyed me up and down. She put a hand on her mouth as she took in my appearance. Oh yeah, it really is you. I'm sorry I forgot, she said as she regained her composure. You know, aging, it really takes a toll on you, she added, which made the three of us laugh. It's fine, I understand. I smiled at her. She also returned the gesture and hugged me abruptly. My eyes widened at her sudden action. Arthur just lightly shook his head as he let out a soft chuckle. As we pulled apart, she smiled at me fondly. Arthur, why didn't you let Sandra visit earlier? She looked at Arthur expectantly. He just shrugged his shoulders. Well, I'll leave you two then. I still have something to do in the kitchen. She grinned at both Arthur and I before she walked away. As I saw Clara's retreating body, I turned to Arthur. I felt like this already happened before, I told him, amused with this entire situation. Of course there were some minor differences to our first meeting and tonight, but it sure felt like déjà vu to me. If that's the case, then you know what happens next. He wiggled his eyebrows at me, suggesting that we go to his bedroom. I raised my hand to hit his arm, but he quickly grabbed it and pulled me to him. I landed on his chest and felt his warmth engulf me. I gazed up at him to see him staring down at me intensely. He slowly lowered his head. I closed my eyes in anticipation for his kiss. I felt his warm lips on mine. I savored the taste of his lips before he gently pulled away. We should take this upstairs. My eyes flew open as his husky voice sent shivers down my spine. As the door closes, every pretense falls. He grabbed me by the waist, pulling me up close against his chest. His hand gently glided through my hair, as he looked at me in a way that made me feel like he had never looked at a girl before. His eyes just had this assurance, this spark that made me feel like I'm truly the only one. My eyes were like candles tonight. They lit a spark of passion and desire. As a small but teasing smile crept upon his face, goosebumps lined my skin, not the kind that one gets in the cold, but the kind one gets when nothing else matters except right here, right now. The facade I showed the world has melted away as I savored the warmth of his embrace. I missed him so much. It was then it hit me. Am I really doing the right thing? I didn't want him to be tied down to someone like me. He deserves someone so much better, someone who wouldn't lie to him, and doesn't have any baggage. I shouldn't do this. I have every intention of pushing Arthur until his hand touches my face. The acceleration of my heart rate has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with what my body really wants. I looked away as if the outside world held my attention, but after all this time he read me like a book. His eyes were on my chest, my breathing rate duly noted. With a gentle finger, he reoriented my face so that he held the gaze I didn't want to give him, stealing the passion from my eyes in a way that only magnifies the spark. There is no smile on his lips, only the hot intensity of his gaze that we both know is the start of the inferno to come. The next thing I knew is our lips were pressed together. In that kiss was the sweetness of passion, a million loving thoughts condensed into a moment. Our lips fitted perfectly as if they were meant for each other, moving against each other, feeling each other. Arthur grabbed the back of my neck, growling in the kiss as I whimpered in pleasure. His right hand dropped to my thigh, pulling up the skirt that hangs loosely above my knees. I couldn't move even if I tried, like his fingers have short-circuited my mind in the best possible way. He turned me around and we tumbled to the bed, making me fall on my back with him on top of me. His eyes searched mine as he flashed me a small yet genuine smile. I love you. And with that I finally knew that I made the right choice. Chapter 40. Taste of Dessert. Tonight I have finally realized why late-night conversations have a deeper, more relational turn than the normal conversations that we have with others during the day. I realized that as I laid down on Arthur's chest while listening to the sound of his heartbeat. We were just wearing our undergarments as he wrapped me in a warm embrace. I turned my head to look at him, making my head rest on his shoulder as our faces were only inches apart. Our breaths mingled as we stared at each other intently. My heart was still racing in my chest and my body ached from a while ago. I just wanted to say, thank you for tonight, I said genuinely as I flashed him a small yet sincere smile. Late-night conversations always seem to hold more weight and teach you more about a person than you knew before. They seem to reach a deeper, more truthful form of honesty than talking to someone during the day. They seem to have the power to turn a horrible day into a spectacular one, change my point of view on subjects that just that morning I viewed as unchangeable, and leave me wanting more. And I think I know why. We often view the night as me time. It's the time we don't have to share with anyone else, but the fact I'm sharing it with him means that he's someone I genuinely love and care about, someone I could fully trust and let in, to show the deep, intricate, hidden and heavy side to me that I usually don't broadcast to the world. No thank you, he said, kissing me on the forehead. My grin widened as my heart leaped with joy. He and I have definitely gone a long way, but one thing remains the same: the comfort and trust one felt with him the very first night has always stayed, and I was foolish to not realize that sooner. I hugged Arthur tighter and closed my eyes, savoring his warmth. I didn't want to leave his embrace. It felt as if when I was in his arms all my pain went away, mental and physical, mostly the depressing pain. If I could only stay in his arms forever, then I would always feel safe from the world's harmful people. I could only hope. I'm not going to sleep tonight, he huffed as he widened and stretched his eyes with his fingers jokingly. I let out a small chuckle at his silly gesture. Why not? I asked curiously. I'm actually getting kind of sleepy, I said with a yawn. My eyes started to tear up from sleepiness. You might be gone when I wake up, he said honestly as I immediately felt a pang of guilt. I quickly sat up and looked at him apologetically. I'm sorry for just disappearing like that, I muttered softly as I held his face with both of my hands. Never again. A quiet contentment spread through him as he nodded in response. His eyes were full of trust and love. I quickly went back to his arms to feel his warmth. I began to feel really sleepy as he gently stroked my hair. A yawn escaped my lips once again. I awoke to the shift of Arthur's body. I hadn't realized that I fell asleep on his chest. I searched for my phone to check the time. It's only 5 a.m. I went back to sit on my side of the bed to admire his features. I lightly caressed his cheeks, which made him shake his head. Looking at his peaceful face made me realize how stupid I was back then. How could I even leave this kind, loving and handsome man beside me? I know that my past actions doesn't define me, but I intend to make better choices in the future. I won't leave him again. I inhaled deeply before I snuggled back to Arthur's body. He shifted once again to face me and hugged me close to his chest. I let out a happy and contented sigh before I went back to sleep again after a couple of minutes, enjoying this peacefulness. Good morning, beautiful. Arthur's husky voice woke me up from my slumber. I sleepily turned to his direction to see him smiling at me, making my heart flutter. He's still handsome even if he just woke up. Good morning. I croaked out, my throat felt dry. How's your sleep? I asked him with a yawn as I stretched and sat up. It was great. How about you? He replied as he moved closer to me. I quickly ran a hand through my disheveled hair to straighten it. I hope he doesn't say anything about it. I cleared my throat to speak clearly. It was fine. I told him casually as I struggled to wipe the dry drool from my face. He inched closer to me as he leaned to whisper something in my ear. I didn't realize you could even look sexier than you already are. His voice was low and sensual. It immediately sent shivers down my spine. When he moved away, his eyes darkened in color. I gulped nervously because of the intensity of his stare. He leaned in to kiss me, but I raised my hand in the space between us, stopping him from moving any closer. Wait, I haven't brushed my teeth yet, I said shyly as I placed my hand over my mouth in embarrassment. He roared with laughter at my sudden confession. What? I didn't want him to smell my morning breath. Why are you laughing? I asked him as my eyebrows furrowed at him. He pulled me into his tight embrace. I couldn't care any less about your breath, he said sincerely before planting a soft kiss on my temple. I don't care about any of those things. I love you as you are, he muttered on the top of my head and planted another kiss there. What did he say? Did I hear him correctly? Did he say he loved me? I bolted right up and faced him. What did you say again? I hurriedly asked him. He only had a confused look on his face. What? The one about your breath, he repeated in confusion as his eyebrows furrowed. I just shook my head at him. No, the last one. His eyes widened as he thought about what I was asking about. He sat up straight, held my hand and looked deeply into my eyes. I said I love you as you are. He gave me one of his handsome smiles as he planted a kiss on my hand. I can feel the butterflies in my stomach go wild with his statement. I grinned at him and threw myself at him to hug him, which made both of us fall down again on the bed. He just chuckled at my reaction. I love you too, I whispered softly into his ears as he circled his hands on my waist. He used his muscles to flip the both of us. He was now on top of me. I so wanted to do this to you earlier. Before I even replied, he quickly cut me off by kissing me passionately. His kiss was warm and wet. My hands made its way up to his nape, enjoying the feel of his kisses. I kissed him with the same passion and intensity. He pulled away as we gasped for air. He rested his forehead on mine. Our breaths mingled with each other. As he steadied his breathing, he eventually moved away. Come, let's have breakfast downstairs, he told me as he stood up from the bed. As I saw him put some clothes on, it made me think that I want to have this for the rest of my life. I wanted to wake up every morning with the man that I love. This made me envision the kind of life I want to have with him. My thoughts were interrupted by Arthur's voice. You can use my clothes for now, he said as he handed me over his shirt and his sweatpants. Oh, thank you. I grabbed them and went to the restroom to get dressed. It was too baggy for me since he's much larger than me, but it will do. I rinsed my face and gargled water to wash off my morning breath. As I felt satisfied with my appearance, I went out and saw Arthur on his phone. He quickly glanced up and saw me. His eyes darkened again. I should have known it's a bad idea to lend you my clothes, he murmured angrily. My eyebrows furrowed because of his statement. My heart sunk to the bottom of my stomach. Maybe I look ugly in it. Why? Do I look bad in it? I asked him, hurt by his expression. He quickly bolted up and hugged me to comfort me. No. It's not that. You looked beautiful in it. He gently kissed the crown of my head. I'm just afraid that I might eat the dessert first before breakfast. His voice turned dangerously serious. I pushed him away, but his eyes were still menacing. Let's eat breakfast first, I told him sternly. His eyes softened as he sighed in defeat. We walked towards the door together and walked outside. When he was about to close the door, I turned to him and told him to lower his head for me. I'll let you eat your dessert later, I whispered to him and walked past him, leaving him with his thoughts to himself. How I wish things would just stay this way. Chapter 41. Regretful Memories. I've always wondered why food tastes better when you eat with someone you care about. I wondered this again as I ate the breakfast that Clara cooked for us. It was just scrambled eggs, bacon, and pancakes, something I would usually cook for myself at home, but there was something about it that made it taste like a 5-star meal. Maybe it was Clara's amazing cooking, or the fact that I was eating it with Arthur. I sighed dreamily as I stared at Arthur, who sat across me. He flashed me a small smile, making my heart skip a beat. There was just a natural soothing quality to his eyes, and to see me is to feel my body relax and my brain begin to blossom once more. I knew it was his very presence that somehow made food taste better. It was the feeling of love and happiness that seemed to affect my sense of taste. Sorry, it's just eggs, bacon, and pancakes, he said apologetically, making me scowl in confusion. I was just thinking about how amazing the food is. I was too lazy to pass by the grocery, so this is all we have left. I frowned as I waved my hands in the air, crossing it with each other to make an X. It's delicious, I said sincerely as happiness swelled within me. I took another bite as I released a satisfied hum. I love it a lot. A quiet contentment spread through him as he nodded in acknowledgement, his grin widening a little bit. You hear that, Clara? He said, raising his voice a little bit for Clara to hear. She popped her head out from the other room. There was a broom in one hand and a dustpan in the other. What? She asked in confusion as she placed the broom and dustpan down and approached us. They're delicious, Clara, I said genuinely as her eyes lit up with happiness. The expression on her face was immediately replaced though with one of confusion as she realized that she just cooked eggs, bacon, and pancakes for us. You're flattering me. She giggled as she turned her back on us to get the dustpan and broom again. Anyone can cook that, she said nonchalantly with a shrug as she returned back to her duties. Thank you though, she yelled from the other room, making me chuckle. My smile quickly faded as I started to recall all the times I've messed up cooking simple things like eggs. I would accidentally put too much pepper and salt or oil. I grimace in disgust, remembering the taste of it. I really couldn't do anything right. So Sandra, he trailed off playfully as he propped his elbows on the table and held his face with both of my hands. I arched an eyebrow as I eyed him in confusion. What does he want this time? When will I get my dessert? He asked teasingly with a wink. I could feel the heat growing in my cheeks as my eyes fell to the floor in embarrassment. By now they must be beyond an attractive rosiness. I opened my mouth to speak but stopped myself when I heard my phone ping, notifying me that someone has sent me a message. I opened my phone to check who the message came from. It was from Ellie. From Ellie. You are not gonna believe this. I raised my brows at her message. She even had a link attached to it. Curiosity immediately got the best of me as I clicked the link. It redirected me to a video footage. It was a bit blurry, so I moved my face closer to my phone. Arthur already finished his meal. Hey, what's that? He asked as wiped his mouth with a napkin. I paused the video first before replying to him. It's just a video sent by Ellie, I responded nonchalantly. He stood up from his seat to sit beside me to also watch the video. It's a bit blurry, I warned him, but he gestured that it's fine, so I pressed play. At the beginning of the video not much has happened. A couple of minutes into it I started to feel bored. I felt like Ellie was just pulling a prank on me. I expected that there would be some kind of jump scare. I glanced at Arthur to see him still focused on the video. I wanted to turn off the video, but since Arthur was still watching I just sat there and turned my attention to the footage again. It was then that I noticed something familiar. I narrowed my eyes at it. What is the— I cut myself short when I finally saw the date that was located at the top left portion of the video. My eyes widened as it dawned on me the contents of the video. I felt as if a bucket full of ice-cold water had been poured down on my head. I stayed silent as I saw the video unfold. All thoughts flew out of my head and only 3 words remained. What the hell? I dropped my phone in surprise. Shock was such an understatement as to what I'm feeling right now. I wanted to speak but no words came out. I didn't even know where to begin. It felt like all the color had drained from my face. Arthur picked up my phone and set it down on the table. Is that— He turned to me, but I just cut him off. Yes, I murmured in response to him. I didn't dare look at him. I'm too afraid to look at his reaction. Maybe he's angry at me because of what we both saw. I wanted to curse and scream, but I didn't seem to have the strength to do all those things. It felt as if the energy in me was sucked out. I recalled Ellie's message earlier. She was right. I too couldn't believe what I saw. What am I gonna do now? I don't want to go through this again. Chapter 42. Desperation at its finest. My brain stutters for a moment and my eyes take in more light than I expected. Every part of me goes on pause while my thoughts catch up. I couldn't even process the situation. As if my brain had short-circuited and needed to be rebooted. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes until I saw nothing but sparkles. I shook my head in disbelief as I held my head with both of my hands. This can't be real. I glanced to look at Arthur as my heart dropped to the pit of my stomach. He seemed to be in shock as well. He was white as chalk. His eyes and mouth were frozen wide open in an expression of stunned surprise, and although he was staring straight at me, he appeared not to notice me at all. "Arthur," I stuttered, still in shock. Around me, everything was in fast forward while I was motionless in the middle of it all. How could Kevin do this to me? Arthur rigidly turned to look at me. His eyes were filled with betrayal and disbelief. "Please tell me that isn't true," he pleaded as he held both of my hands in his. "It isn't. I swear," I said as I drew a cross on my chest with my finger, swearing that I was telling the truth. He probably edited the date. I tried to think of a logical explanation of this as Arthur, and I studied the security camera footage. It was on the day that he took advantage of me, which was the last time he ever went to my apartment building. After he trashed my apartment, I was left alone sobbing on the floor, while he walked out completely enraged. Even though I was sure that is what happened, I was very confused to see the both of us happily walking out of the apartment building with our arms linked with each other. I couldn't have imagined all of that, right? I knew that I needed more concrete evidence to confirm that I was not crazy. I quickly picked up my phone and zoomed in the video as I narrowed my eyes, examining my outfit. I was wearing a white blouse with skinny denim jeans. I frowned as I tried to look at the color of my hair. My hair was blonde for a while. Being half Asian and in a predominantly white community, I desperately wanted to look more white. However, at this point in my life, I finally accepted myself for who I am and grew out my hair before dyeing it completely black a few days before that day. I scowled as I anxiously waited for an opportunity to see the color of the ends of my hair. My hair was tied up into a tight ponytail, and so it was difficult to see the ends. "What are you looking at?" I held up a hand, cutting him short as I watched myself finally turn my head towards Kevin, showing a bit of my blonde hair. A smile crept to my lips as I immediately paused it and took a screenshot. "There," I said, pointing at my hair. He tilted his head in confusion, not following with what I was trying to prove. "I dyed my hair black a few days before Kevin took advantage of me. There's no way that I'd still have those blonde ends," I explained seriously as Arthur looked at the screenshot that I took, nodding in understanding. "But you know that's not enough to prove that he's lying, right?" Arthur said sadly as he ran a hand through his disheveled hair in frustration. I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that I am dragging him again into my mess. "I'm sorry," I muttered softly as my eyes fell to my hands. I played with my fingers as I nervously waited for his response by rubbing them together, cracking my knuckles and removing random dried-up skin. "Sorry for what?" He furrowed his brows in confusion. I sighed in defeat as I slumped in the chair. "For involving you in my problems." His eyes softened as he moved closer. He gripped my hand tightly as if to reassure me that everything will be fine. "Don't be sorry," he assured me. "We'll find a way through this, okay?" I gave him a small smile as I leaned closer to rest my head on his shoulders. How can I prove that the video is a fake one? I zoned out as I thought of a way to prove that what I'm saying is the truth. I'm pretty sure the public would be furious. They would think that I'm making up these accusations against Kevin and would turn against me. My hands started sweating as I continuously thought about their immediate response when watching the video. My frustration grew immensely as I couldn't come up with a plan to defend myself. I stood up, pacing back and forth in the room as I became anxious with all the thoughts bombarding me at the moment. "Aren't you getting tired of walking? You look like a patrolling security guard, babe." He stood up as he hugged me from behind. A thought immediately popped into my head as I heard his statement. "That's it," I squealed as I freed myself from his hug and turned to face him. The dread I felt earlier was replaced with excitement. Thinking about the possible scenarios in my head made it seem like my problem is a dead end. However, thanks to Arthur's concern, it sparked a solution to my dilemma. "You're a genius." I jumped up to kiss him. He just stood there awkwardly looking at me as I became excited about the plan I thought of. "Hold on." He held his hands up. "I don't understand anything you're saying." He ran a hand through his hair with a perplexed look on his face. I chuckled a bit at his adorable appearance. I stretched my neck and stood on my tippy toes to plant another kiss on his lips. "You just helped me realize something," I told him after the kiss. He gestured for me to continue. "Well, you know how this video was caught in a CCTV camera?" I trailed off as I sat back down and pulled out the video again to show him. "So you know who has access to this thing?" I asked him, thinking that he already knows the answer. "The management?" he replied, unsure of where I was going with this. I pursed my lips into a thin line as I scratched my head, showing that it was not the answer I was expecting from him, but I guess he was close. "Yeah, these belong to the management, but the guards have access to these," I finally explained to him. His eyes widened as realization hit him. Anyway, what I'm saying is let's go back to the apartment complex and ask for the original CCTV footage of the said date. That way we can confirm the authenticity of the video. I elaborated seriously. He pulled me in for a huge hug. You're the genius one for thinking about this. He muttered as he suddenly smothered my face with kisses. I laughed loudly at his actions. He moved away, which got me thinking he was already done, but then he placed one last kiss on my lips. I can feel him smiling in our kiss. You thought I was finished with you? He said teasingly. All right, enough of these kisses. I raised my hands to stop him. We still need to go to the apartment complex. We'll have plenty of time for this later. I added sternly as I stood up from my seat. My reputation is on the line. I need to show people that I am not a liar. We can always have time for silly moments like this once we are finished dealing with Kevin. Okay, I understand. He sighed in defeat as he lazily stood up. I grabbed his hand as we walked upstairs. Arthur let me use his bathroom to freshen up. Since I didn't have any spare clothes with me, he lent me the smallest shirt and jogging pants that he could find in his closet for me to change in. I folded the sleeves so it might look like this was my size. This can do for now since I didn't have any choice. He also let me use a spare toothbrush in his cabinet. I liked that I had this now. It was like I marked my territory at his home. As soon as I finished preparing myself, I stepped out and let Arthur freshen up. He took less time to prepare than I did. Are you ready? He asked me as he checked his appearance in the mirror. A small smile formed my lips as I couldn't help but admire him. It was the first time that I ever saw him in casual attire, and it surprisingly made him even hotter than he already was. Yeah, I croaked out, shaking my head to snap myself out from the trance that I was in. We made our way to his car. Being the gentleman that he is, he still opened the door for me. I always loved that about him. It made me think that chivalry might not be dead because of Arthur. As we drove our way to the apartment complex, my heart was beating faster in anticipation. I know the truth and what I saw isn't it. It blew my mind as to how he came to think about that in the first place. He must have been really desperate to stoop so low as to forge a video of us. I just hope that once we get there the guards can lend us the tape. I'll do anything just to get my hands on it. We're here, Arthur muttered as he parked the car, interrupting my thoughts. I inhaled sharply as we stepped out of the car and walked inside the entrance. A rush of memories started flooding in as I recalled the time when I still stayed here. I remembered the days where I would come home late from work, the time Ellie and I went shopping, and even the time when Kevin still treated me fairly. Are you okay? Arthur turned around to ask me, realizing I stopped from my steps. I shook my head to remove these memories in my head. Yeah, I'm fine, I muttered as I walked up to him. Arthur let me lead the way to the security room. As we entered the room, we saw a guard seated on his desk. He looked very intimidating. His eyes were brooding as he fixated them on his cell phone. His figure was well built as if he worked out regularly. I gulped as we approached him to ask about the security footage of the day Kevin harassed me. I'm not allowed to release any footage to outsiders. He deadpanned and went back to minding his own business. I felt frustrated as this guy wouldn't even budge. As I was about to speak again, Arthur stopped me. I'll handle this. I hesitated, but I know I could trust him. As he talked to the guard, I only realized Arthur's talent. He's good. Chapter 43 Losing Battle. It was only now that I have truly witnessed the persuasive power of money. I've read in an article before that the two greatest inventions of the human mind were writing and money, the common language of interest being intelligence and the common language of self-interest. Money has been a tool that we could use in order to attain goals that we could not attain directly, and I was only able to truly see the persuasive power that it holds as I watched Arthur pull out a check and a ball pen that had his name engraved on it. How much did he pay you? Arthur asked nonchalantly as he placed the check down and clicked the ball pen. The man pursed his lips as he rubbed his chin, pretending to be deep in thought. No, I can't, he said firmly as he crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked away. Arthur arched an eyebrow at him before he started writing a number on the check. I stretched my neck a little bit to get a closer look of the amount that Arthur planned to give him, and my eyes widened in shock as I saw the number of zeros that he was writing. Arthur, is that— oh, I cut myself short when he moved the check face down towards the guy. The man eyed the check, then looked at us before he reluctantly picked it up to check the amount. Would that work for you? Arthur asked calmly as he stared at the man expectantly. The man pressed his lips together, struggling to mask the surprised expression on his face. He let out a long, exasperated sigh as he placed the check in his safe. Which footage do you want to see again? He asked attentively now as he placed his hands on his hips. He still looked hesitant to help us, but the amount on that check was enough to convince him to search it for us. The last day that Kevin Butler went to this building, I said confidently, making him roll his eyes at me. I need a date, ma'am, he said curtly. I furrowed my eyebrows at his rude actions and responses. March 28th. He nodded in response as he started typing on his computer. His eyes widened in realization as he looked at us apologetically. Mr. Butler asked me to delete other footage that had him in it, but don't worry, it's possible for me to retrieve it. He explained, his voice was laced with panic. It was my turn to frown and cross my arms at him. How long will this take? I asked, my voice had a hint of annoyance in it. A few hours, but I can give it to the both of you by the end of the day. He retorted as he busily worked on his computer. I opened my mouth to speak, but Arthur beat me to it. Contact me when it's done. Arthur left his calling card next to the man and he nodded at me, signaling me to just leave. I let out a sigh as I hunched my back in defeat. I reluctantly walked out of the room. A bitter expression was on my face. Did you really have to give him that much money? I said in frustration as he finally walked out of the room as well. He gave me a small smile and patted me gently on the head, making me scowl at him. Trust me on this, now let's go have coffee while we wait, he said cheerfully as he grabbed my hand and squeezed it assuringly. This definitely eased the tension in my body as I decided to just go with the flow. We walked hand in hand to the nearest coffee shop. While passing a large number of people walking along the street, a few of them were giving side glances to the both of us. Arthur must have not noticed this since he just walked confidently. Meanwhile, these looks definitely made me feel self-conscious. I tried to ignore them and held my head high as we approached the cafe. Arthur, being the gentleman that he is, opened the door for me. As soon as I went inside, the chattering suddenly died down. I can feel all of their eyes on me. This made me freeze in my steps. I didn't want to take any step further inside. I was not accustomed to this kind of attention, so it made me feel sick in my stomach. But Arthur was in such a good mood, so he still urged me to go inside. Maybe he was just oblivious to the people's stare. I heard people's inaudible whispers as we walked inside to find a seat. It made my palms sweaty and my stomach churn. I wanted to turn back and just go home, but Arthur already found a table for us. He pulled out a seat for me. Don't mind them, babe, he whispered as I sat down. I just nodded in response to acknowledge what he said. You stay here, I'll get us something to drink. He placed a kiss on my head before going to the counter to order. I tugged on his arm because I didn't want him to leave me alone, but he reassured me that he'll be quick. I sighed in defeat, knowing that I won't be able to stop him. I'll just try my best to ignore the glares and the whispers that people were giving me. I busied myself on my phone as I waited for Arthur to come back. I heard someone yell my name from a distance. As I turned around to see where the sound came from, a bagel immediately hit my face. I felt my heart drop to the pit as the bagel slid down my face and fell on my lap, staining Arthur's joggings a little bit. I snapped my head to the direction where the bagel was thrown, my eyebrows furrowed in annoyance. As I did, I heard a couple of guys laughing from another table. I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to do or say something. I knew that I had to stand up for myself. People cannot treat me this way for a lie that Kevin has made. The loud laughter multiplied, almost deafening me. I felt my mind throbbing as I started to be overwhelmed with everything. I pressed my lips together, knowing that I couldn't do or say anything yet. I will just fall into their trap, making me look like the bad person in the end. I let out a soft sigh before I wiped my face with a napkin and pretended that nothing happened. Sandra, a random guy called out. Maybe if I don't look back they'll leave me alone. However, I was wrong to assume that. After a couple more yelling, they threw another bagel at the back of my head. I heard the nearby table snickering at me. I didn't want to pay any attention to any of them. Engaging any of them would only end badly. It was then that a woman suddenly passed by my table. She poured her water all over me. Serves you right, you lying bitch, she spat out as she walked away. Her friends gave her high fives as she sat down. I have never felt any more embarrassed than I am today. My hands were shaking so much in fear. At this point, all I wanted was to go home and cry. I couldn't take any more of these. I looked around to find Arthur only to see him still in line to get our order. I got up from my seat, ready to tell Arthur that we need to go. As I walked to where he was standing, someone deliberately tripped me, causing me to fall hard on the floor. By this time, almost everyone in the entire cafe was laughing at me and calling me horrible names. I didn't want to get back up, fearing that another person would trip me again. It was then Arthur's voice silenced the whole coffee shop. Stop, he shouted loudly, surprising the people in the cafe. You don't know what Sandra had been through. The video circulating the internet is a lie. He explained, trying to defend me. People were at loss for words as he tried to help me up. We walked out of the cafe, but a man suddenly screamed, making us stop in our tracks. Nice try defending her here. Let's see how far you can take her side once you read all the nasty things on the internet. He called out. His words felt like I had been shot by an arrow as my heart throbbed painfully. Arthur stiffened beside me and clenched his fists. I didn't want to make things worse, so I turned around and walked towards the door, signaling him to just ignore the man and leave. My phone suddenly kept pinging as I stepped out of the cafe, signifying that I had received multiple notifications all at once. I frowned in confusion and pulled my phone out to check it as I hurriedly walked back home. My hand flew to my mouth as tears started to form in my eyes. I stopped mid-step, making Arthur catch up with me. I can't do this anymore. Chapter 44. Glimmer of Hope. I have always been so self-conscious when I cried, but now I just gave way to the enormity of my grief. I sobbed into my hands and the tears dripped between my fingers, raining down onto the pavement. My breathing was ragged, gasping, and the strength left my legs. I sank to my knees, not caring about the grit that dug into it. I was noisy, my skin was blotched, but I couldn't care anymore. Everything has become too much for me to handle, and it was difficult for me to continue to stay strong. I grasped my chest, trying to calm myself down, but I couldn't. Arthur wrapped his arms around me as my body trembled with each sob. The sound of my sobbing was the sound of a heart breaking. Hearts don't snap like brittle caramel or burst like an overfilled balloon. A heart breaks in the heaving waves of a new disturbing reality that has arrived uninvited. These hurtful and threatening tweets, posts, and messages have become too much for me to handle. Not to mention the terrible things those people did to me at the cafe. Who knows what else they could have done to me if Arthur weren't there. I desperately wanted to stay strong, but why? My voice cracked at the last word. As I sat there in Arthur's arms, my shoulders were loose and my hands were hanging low as I made no attempt to conceal or even wipe away my own tears. Every time I pick myself up, he manages to bring me back down again and again. I muttered in between each sob. I doubt Arthur was able to understand what I was even saying because he just hugged me tighter. I couldn't even stop the tears from falling anymore as I recalled each hurtful thing someone said about me. It's a kind of crying that shows the child underneath, that the hurt has cut right back through the protective layers acquired in maturity. It was hard to fight a losing battle. Maybe I shouldn't bother anymore. I muttered wistfully as I leaned on Arthur's shoulder. Arthur turned to look at me and opened his mouth to speak until his phone pinged, signaling that he had received a text message from someone. He pulled out his phone and his eyes widened in shock. "What's up?" I asked, noticing his reaction. A smile crept to his lips as he turned to look at me excitedly. "There is still hope, Sandra," he said as he showed me the text that he received. It was from the man a while ago. From unknown number. I finished retrieving the footage. I also gathered and compiled all the footage that has Kevin Butler in it. My heart leaped with joy as I wiped my face with the back of my hands. I let out a soft chuckle, feeling embarrassed for breaking down a while ago. There is still hope. I can't give up yet, especially when I have such an amazing support system around me. "Let's go," Arthur said as he stood up and brushed the dirt from his clothing. He reached his hand out for me and I grabbed it excitedly. As we made our way back to the apartment, there were still a lot of people glancing at us. Because of my excitement, I decided to ignore them. This glimmer of hope was enough to help me stay strong. It still hurts me that a lot of people have turned against me immediately without even finding out the truth, but I'll just be the bigger person and understand them since they were brainwashed by Kevin. "Are you okay?" Arthur asked, making sure that I was fine with all the attention these people were giving me. I nodded at him to reassure him that I was fine. We walked in silence to the apartment complex. I held my head high despite the continuous dirty looks I got from different people. I let out a sigh as we reached the building. This is it. I can finally clear my name and let Kevin pay for all his wrongdoings to me. My heart fluttered with excitement at the mere thought of it. As we made our way to the security room, I couldn't contain the eagerness I was feeling, so I hurriedly walked there. Upon opening the door, I was immediately greeted by the guard earlier. "Here's the footage you asked for." The guard handed over the flash drive containing all the files we asked for. Arthur, who followed closely behind me, asked to check first the contents of the flash drive before we could leave. He obliged to his requests and showed us the videos inside the flash drive. A content smile made its way to my face as he navigated all through the files. I looked at Arthur, checking to see if he was satisfied with it. "That's everything," he muttered as the last video ended. The guard handed the flash drive to Arthur. "Thank you," he told him as we walked out of the room. Arthur stopped in his steps and looked at the guard seriously. Do not mention any of this to anyone. This stays between us or else. His voice was full of intimidation. The guard saluted at him in response. As we walked back to Arthur's car, numerous thoughts popped in my head. I need to think of a way to carefully execute my revenge on him. These security tapes are not enough. If I really want to end all of this, I must release every bit of proof that I have in order to clear my name completely. You're awfully quiet, Arthur murmured. He must have felt the shift in my mood from the security room. Were you not satisfied with it? He asked curiously. I shook my head at him. No, it's not that, I replied, trying to push back the thoughts in my head. I was just thinking about a plan on how I can get back at Kevin, I added. Arthur smiled at me before pulling me in for a hug. You have me, right? We'll think about it together, he softly whispered. Then he planted a light kiss on my forehead. My heart felt at ease with his reassuring words. I'm really glad to have Arthur in my life because I have someone to share my worries with. There is nothing wrong with asking for a little help from someone from time to time, and I'm perpetually grateful that he is always there for me no matter what. Thank you for everything, I said sincerely before we proceeded to walk again. He just nodded in response and interlocked his fingers with mine. I can overcome this. Chapter 45, Liberating Truth. Am I really ready to do this? I'm sitting next to my window, feeling the warm breeze of an August morning, yet I'm shaking. If I'd stayed up all night, it would have made no difference to my exhaustion. By the morning the bedsheets were in a knot, and aside from a few fitful half-hours of vivid dreams, I barely slept at all. My brain is constantly searching for details I could have possibly missed out, and possible evidence that could further prove that my story is right. My stomach shifts uneasily, and I notice that the hands that I am hugging myself with are pinching into my skin. I release my hands, but then I couldn't figure out what to do with them. So instead they clasped and unclasped each other, as if in constant need of touch and reassurance. Sandra, are you ready? Arthur's low and husky voice snapped me out of the trance I was in. I rigidly turned to look at him and nodded reluctantly in response. He let out a soft sigh as he held my face with both of his hands. It will be all right. I'm here, he said assuringly before he planted a soft kiss on my forehead. A quiet contentment spread across my face as hope bloomed inside of me. Yes, I finally said with fake confidence as I gave him a small smile. He nodded as a retort before he grabbed his laptop and sat next to me. He placed his laptop on his lap, moving it a little to the side for me to see everything. His mouse was now hovering over the publish button. We are going to fight back, he said seriously as he furrowed his eyebrows in determination. We will give Kevin a taste of his own medicine. I swallowed the lump that was in my throat as I moved his hand away from the keypad. He turned to look at me in confusion. Why? I cut him short. I want to do it, I responded solemnly as my hand was on the keypad now, moving the mouse back to the publish button. This is my battle. And with that I posted the video. Arthur and I filmed a response video to Kevin's statement that had more solid proof: screenshots, raw security footage, receipt of the items that he damaged in my house that I had to fix, a picture of the mess he left my apartment in, my hair color, and Ellie's testimony, who was able to witness everything from the sidelines. I honestly hesitated to let Ellie tweet her own side of the story after I posted my video, knowing that she still worked in KB Studios. However, she insisted on doing this for me. She applied to other companies just in case she would get fired, but she believed that things would eventually move towards my favor, and that Kevin had no right to kick her out from the company for saying the truth. A small yet triumphant smile crept my lips as I couldn't help but feel grateful for the amazing support system that I have. I didn't know what I'd do without Arthur and Ellie's help. They mean the whole world to me. Thank you, I said sincerely as I put an arm over Arthur and placed my head lovingly on his shoulder. He reciprocated the gesture by leaning his head on mine as well. We'll get through this together, I swear, he said assuringly as he gave me a light squeeze. My grin widened. This time I don't need his reassurance. Despite the anxiety and fear I've been feeling throughout all of this, I knew that I'll eventually be triumphant. The truth will always come out. I opened my mouth to speak until I saw the tweets that were coming in when Arthur went to the website. Tears started to well up in my eyes as I read each of them one by one. I was overwhelmed by the amount of support that I am receiving that I couldn't help but cry. A tear rolled down my cheek, but I quickly wiped it with the back of my hand. It has been a rough few weeks, but I managed to push through it. There's no time to be weak now. At Ellie_20. Sandra is a friend of mine. I was there to comfort her when Mr. Butler took advantage of her and spread fake rumors about her. It pained me to see her go through all of these things just because of some nasty producer. I only chose to speak now because I've had enough of Kevin's deliberate plans to make Sandra suffer. I don't care whether I get fired from KB Studios anymore. Enough is enough, Kevin Butler. At AL_421 LG. What a horrible human being Kevin Butler really is. Imagine editing a fake video just to pin the blame on the victim. #jail Kevin Butler. At Britney7293. Kevin Butler should be held accountable for all his wrongdoings. People should also apologize to Sandra for believing the video Kevin posted. At KLCR071298. I feel so guilty going against Sandra's words. I can't believe Kevin Butler would stoop so low. All these tweets resurfacing on the web supporting me and turning against Kevin brought so much gladness into my heart. It felt like all the hard work I had put into revealing the truth were finally paying off. My thoughts were cut off by my phone ringing. I set the laptop down and got up to where my phone was located. It was from an unknown number. As soon as the call connected, the other line's voice made me shiver. It was a voice I knew well, Kevin. I told Arthur it was Kevin who was calling. He asked me to place the call on speaker mode and record the call so that we have another evidence against him. Hello, Sandra. His excitement sounded so fake that I tried to hide the urge to gag at him. What do you want? I asked him seriously, trying to sound as normal as I can. Well, I saw the stunt you pulled today. I'm just here to congratulate you on a job well done. He muttered dangerously, dropping his pretentious act. What can I say? I learned from the best. I retorted, sounding a bit arrogant. I know by doing this it can put him off and reveal his true self. You think you can take me down by editing the video? I thought you're better than that. I provoked him even more. Listen here, you bitch. I can easily take those things down. His voice was getting louder. I'm sure he's getting riled up right now with my taunting. Didn't you know? I can pay a hefty amount of cash to the police so they'll cover everything up. He added proudly. This made me smile as I got another evidence to win against him. Arthur asked me to step aside so that he'll be the one to talk to him. I hesitated for a bit, but he reassured me that he can take it from here. I reluctantly gave him the phone, but I knew I could trust him. Hello, Kevin. This Arthur Williams. Arthur said coldly. Do you want to continue this to court? My eyes widened at his sudden statement. Arthur looked like he was dead serious as he waited for Kevin to answer. He cleared his throat to respond. What? Kevin croaked out. This is getting more interesting. Chapter 46. Threats and Opportunities. Are you ready to continue this battle in court? Arthur repeated threateningly. I gazed at the serious expression that he had on his face. His eyebrows were furrowed as he glared at the phone, waiting expectantly for his answer. Kevin. Arthur's voice was low, harsh, and almost demanding. Arthur's eyes were completely locked on it. The thought of him being at the other side of the line already made Arthur grimace in disgust. I leaned in closer in anticipation. All we could hear was silence from the other side of the line. The silence that filled my room made my blood as cold as the air that crept through my open window. Bereft of any wind, the leaves outside hung limp until they fell of their own accord. There was no whispering noise or rustling. It was as if nature decided to stay silent as well, waiting expectantly for Kevin's response. Kevin. It was my turn to call his attention. Is he even listening? I bit my lower lip anxiously. The silence has gnawed at my insides. The silence was like a gaping void, needing to be filled with sounds, words, or anything really. Will he agree to this or not? His possible response to this drove me crazy. Fine. Kevin finally responded reluctantly. His voice was soft and weak, and it almost came out as a whisper. You win. He said with a sigh as my eyes widened in surprise. I felt a sudden flare of joy as my heart leaped with happiness. I could hardly contain my happiness as a wide grin formed my lips. I couldn't believe it. We won. We don't need to take this to court. I will stop. And with that he hung up. I sat there in shock, my eyes and mouth were wide in a stunned surprise. It was almost like I was paralyzed with happiness. After a year of succumbing to his abuse and threats, I finally broke free from the chains he had created for me. I sat back and let the happiness soak right into my bones while a smile was eternally stained upon my lips. I closed my eyes and savored the moment. For the first time in forever, my body and mind relaxed. At that moment, I felt like a heavy load was lifted off my shoulders. I made it through all of this alive. I was a winner and a survivor. We did it. Arthur exclaimed happily as he pulled me in a tight hug. His embrace was warm, and his big strong arms seemed very protective when wrapped around my petite body. The world around me melted away as I squeezed him back, not wanting the moment to end. I felt tears drop from my eyes one by one, leaving damp evidence on Arthur's t-shirt, but the proof was written all over my face. Crying was hard to hide. He simply hugged me tighter as I buried my face onto his shirt. I was just so overwhelmed with happiness that I didn't know how to properly contain my feelings anymore. Had I ever been happier in my life? Probably not, but now that I am in Arthur's arms, I know that more happiness in my life will come. I pulled away and held his face. His eyes are so different in moments like these, softer than I knew eyes could be. The professional man I once knew in Williams Incorporated is gone, and instead it is the eyes of one who loves deeply. If it were anyone else I would drop my gaze, but with him I'm drawn in closer, always wanting more. It's finally over. He whispers happily and I just nod, taking in every moment for my memory, and savoring the victory that we've struggled desperately to achieve. I leaned in and gently pressed my lips against his forehead. It was my turn to do this gesture. In all the world there isn't another like him or me for that matter. We are two souls who feel like once upon another reality we were soulmates, eternal flames. We should celebrate, Arthur suggested, grinning widely. My treat, he added excitedly. I nodded at him as we walked hand in hand to his car. So where are you taking me? I asked him, squinting my eyes at him teasingly. He just laughed at me and planted a kiss on my forehead. You'll see. He winked at me as he opened the door's car. I'm not that fond of surprises, but I know I can trust Arthur. On our way to the restaurant I couldn't help but feel satisfied. I hummed quietly as I enjoyed the car ride. I'm so glad it's already over. Arthur pulled up into a familiar restaurant. Surprise! Arthur's enthusiastic voice filled the car. It was the restaurant where we both confessed to each other. It brought a smile to my face as memories of that day suddenly came flooding. I remember the first time I went through these doors. I was so nervous at that time because I had decided to reject Arthur. However, things don't always turn out the way you think it would. Fast forward a couple of months later. I am back here again with the love of my life. Walking hand in hand with Arthur here sure feels different. We followed closely the waiter in charge. As he handed out the menu to us, he mentioned their bestseller. What do you want? Arthur asked as he flipped through the pages. I also did the same, but I couldn't pick between the shrimp puttanesca and the creamy salmon chowder. How about you? I asked him as I tried to make up my mind between the two. Maybe, I'll have the grilled snapper with mango salsa, he told the waiter. I decided to order the shrimp puttanesca instead. As the waiter excused himself, Arthur held my hand. I'm so glad to have a date with the most beautiful woman in the room. He smirked. We've been together for a couple of months now and I still can't get used to this. I can feel my face heating up with his remark. I tried to hide my face, but he abruptly held my hand as if to stop me. I already told you not to hide your pretty face. His smooth retort made the butterflies inside my stomach grow wild. Oh, stop it, will you? I told him while fanning myself to lessen the redness of my face. He laughed at my immediate reaction. As the food arrived, we chatted about various topics. We talked about anything under the sun. Then I asked him about the company. His gaze looked serious once I popped the question. I have something to tell you. His eyes looked unsure. What could it be? What is it? I asked him as curiosity was evident in the tone of my voice. I have decided to expand my business. My eyes widened in surprise with his statement. I am planning on opening Williams Incorporated's very first restaurant. His eyes held a glint of excitement as he announced this to me. A wide smile crept to my lips as pride swelled up inside of me. Arthur is truly amazing. That's great to hear, I said happily, making him smirk as well, pleased with the reaction that I made. But how about the events coordination? I asked curiously. Well, I'm planning on discussing with the board members who would be the next head of the events coordination, since I'll be busier overseeing the upcoming business venture. He retorted seriously as he ran a hand through his hair. I reached out to grab his hand and gripped it tightly. I'll always support you, Arthur, I voiced out, making him smile in appreciation. We both enjoyed the night talking about our plans for the future. He shared with me the reason why he wanted to expand his company. It made me feel hopeful for our bright tomorrow. Things are looking good for both of us. Chapter 47, Peace at Last. Life is definitely unpredictable. Strange how life works. One day I think that things will go as usual, and then the next something can happen out of the blue that causes everything to change. This usually happens when we least expect it. I've experienced this way too many times before. I'd often think to myself that it was just meant to be, or the stars must have been aligned for that to happen. This is what I felt as I stared at the advertisement that I made to post on social media. Who knew that I'd decide to work as a freelance makeup and hair stylist? I've always worked under a company. I needed that sense of security that I would be able to make enough money for survival. However, Arthur's decision to expand Williams Incorporated sparked something within me. Suddenly, I was willing to take the risk. I was willing to pursue my dreams on my own terms. For once, I would be my own boss. I was no longer bound to a contract or a slave to my boss' demands. I am free to do whatever I want. Was I really ready for this? Hell yeah, I am. I muttered to myself triumphantly before I pressed the publish button, finally posting the poster I made. I quickly shared this on other social media sites as well, hoping that other people would make an appointment soon. Life has really been great for Arthur, and I so far ever since Kevin has stopped harassing me. I was receiving overwhelming support from thousands of people online every day. The movement that I have started has continued, and a lot of news outlets have reached out to interview me. Arthur has been preparing for the expansion of Williams Incorporated, while I have decided to really continue my dreams and try something new. The both of us have decided to take extremely big risks in terms of career, but for once, I was no longer anxious or afraid of the unpredictability of the future. I felt confident and safe as long as Arthur was here beside me. Meanwhile, things have not been going too well for Kevin. When he didn't respond to my video that debunked the statement he made and the video he posted online, people started to constantly send him hate every day. The backlash was immense until the point some were even protesting in front of KB Studios to force him to resign. His projects were left unfinished because most of his sponsors had pulled out because they didn't want to be associated with him and the company, and the stocks of his company quickly crashed after. I felt a pair of large hands massage my shoulders. "What are you up to, beautiful?" Arthur whispered sensually to my ear. I resisted the urge to moan as his gesture made me shiver. I closed my eyes, trying to calm my beating heart. I cleared my throat to answer him. "I was just staring at my website," I muttered softly as I turned to face him. I moved aside to show him the contents of the one I made. "What do you think?" I asked him, turning around to see his reaction. He navigated his way through the whole page, checking everything. He put a hand on his chin as if he was thinking deeply and turned to me. "Well?" His facial expression looked unsure. I felt nervous all of a sudden. What if he doesn't like it? I gulped as I waited for his answer. "I love it," he cheerily said and kissed me abruptly. My mind went blank. What did he just say? Did I hear it correctly? What was that again? I asked again, trying to make sure I understood correctly. He slowly reiterated the words again. "I love it." He grinned from ear to ear. I stood up to hit his arms. He really loves teasing me like this. He just laughed at me. "I hate you," I pouted at him. He cupped my face and brought my face near him to plant a soft kiss on my lips. I held back the smile that was trying to creep to my mouth. "I beg to disagree. You love me." He kissed me again. This time I couldn't help but smile at his cute gesture. I nodded at him and gave him a small peck on his cheek. Who would have thought that the intimidating CEO I once knew could be this adorable? I gestured to him to go back to bed and turned away from him to close my laptop. "Anyway, have you seen the news about KB Studios?" I muttered curiously as I made my way beside him. "Yeah, Kevin already resigned this morning." He responded nonchalantly with a shrug as he engulfed me in a warm embrace. My eyes suddenly widened with this new information. "What? Really?" Surprise was clearly evident in my voice as I asked him. I was taken aback by this sudden news. Knowing Kevin's prideful self, the backlash must be too intense for him to handle. I got so busy with setting up with my new website that I didn't have time to check the latest updates on him. "Yep, check your phone." He grabbed my phone from the bedside table and handed it over to me. I searched for Kevin's resignation on the internet. I read a couple of news articles containing his statement and KB Studios' statement regarding his departure from the company. As the saying goes, what goes around comes around. It made me feel triumphant that Kevin finally got what he deserved. A smile crept my lips as I thought about downfall. Despite the hardships I faced because of him, everything was worth it. I turned off my phone and looked up at him. Finally, Kevin's out of the picture, I told Arthur as I planted a small kiss on his lips and snuggled closer to him. His hug tightened as he gently kissed the crown of my head. "We can now focus on ourselves and our future together," he whispered happily as a quiet contentment spread through the both of us. The silence that filled the room immediately after was not awkward or tense but very comforting. The both of us are just glad that it's finally over. I closed my eyes and recalled everything that had happened. Looking back at the hardships I had to overcome, I felt proud of myself for how far I have come. I owe my growth to myself, Ellie, Ralph, and Arthur. If it was not for them, I don't think I would have made all of these decisions by myself. I murmured a small thanks to Arthur before drifting myself to sleep. I'm looking forward to my new start with Arthur. Chapter 48, Boy Troubles. I wouldn't want anything more in the world than this. I closed my laptop as I finished checking my website and looked at Arthur, who was busily typing on his laptop. He's working on his business plan for his new expansion. He seemed enthusiastic about working on this new project despite the hectic schedule. He had been buried with work as he needed to meet up with investors and discuss his proposal. This was the only time he chose to stay at home. He insisted that he needed a break from the office, and that he felt guilty for being too busy, so he wanted to spend time with me. His idea of spending quality time was to be working side by side. I propped my elbows on the table to support my head. Gazing at him working intently on his laptop made me recall the days when I was still at Williams Incorporated. I remember the time when I would just take a peek from my desk to see his eyebrows furrowed in concentration. A smile crept up my face as these memories flashed in my head. My thoughts were immediately cut off by Arthur's voice. "Is there something on my face?" he asked, turning his eyes away from his laptop and looking at me. His hair was disheveled from the dozens of times he ran his hand through it. Nonetheless, he still looked so handsome. I shook my head in response. "Nothing, I was just admiring you working," I said nonchalantly. "That reminds me. I thought this was supposed to be our quality time." His eyes widened at me. A look of horror flashed in his eyes as he checked his watch for the time. "I'm so sorry. I was only supposed to work for an hour, but it took long because I still needed to," he babbled quickly. I chuckled at his immediate reaction, to which he stared at me completely dumbfounded. "I'm just messing with you," I muttered as I cupped his face and caressed his cheeks. "Besides, I enjoyed working together with you," I added as I planted a kiss on his lips. "Are you really sure you're not mad?" he questioned warily. I nodded at him and kissed his forehead before standing up from my seat to stretch my arms and legs. "Where are you going?" "I'll just get us something to eat. You can finish your work," I muttered as I grabbed my phone and walked to the kitchen. As soon as I opened it, there was a missed call and a text message from Ellie. She said that she'll be coming over because she needed my help. I took a peek at Arthur and told him that Ellie will be coming over later. He gave me a thumbs up and proceeded to work again. I sighed as I prepared a peanut butter jelly sandwich for the two of us. Working on my own website and Arthur working on his new project brought a smile to my face. I'm glad the both of us are working on our own fields that we both want. At first, his expansion to creating his own restaurant didn't make sense. However, as he explained the reason, I'm beginning to see a much bigger picture for him. The reason he wanted to create his own restaurant is because it's closely related to coordinating different events. Instead of contracting a caterer, he would just use the chefs from his restaurant. Also, using his own restaurant as a venue and turning it into the theme of the event would be more cost-efficient. This made me even more admire him as an upcoming entrepreneur. I hope my own little business can also flourish. My thoughts were suddenly interrupted when I heard a knock on the door. I snapped my head towards the source of the sound as my eyebrows raised in amusement. "Wow, that was fast." Arthur turned to look at me and he was about to stand, but I raised my hand, stopping him from doing so. "I'll handle it," I mouthed, gesturing to him to continue his work. I heard another knock, making me let out a long and tired sigh. "Coming," I yelled as I lazily stood up from the couch and walked towards it. "Ellie," I called as I held the handle, making sure that it was really her. "Sandra, let me in," Ellie said impatiently as I swung open the door, revealing a distraught Ellie. Her hair was disheveled and she had a confused expression on her face. I couldn't help but chuckle at her appearance. It was the first time I've ever seen her like this. I was starting to wonder if this is how I looked like from Ellie's point of view when I was stressing over Kevin and Arthur. "Come in," I said as I stepped aside and bit my lower lip, struggling to stifle a laugh. Ellie let out a loud groan as she walked inside with her back hunched and her head down. Arthur raised his hand to greet her, but she was too deep in thought. I cleared my throat trying to get her attention. I don't think she has noticed that Arthur is even there. "I'm so TI, she cut herself short as her eyes widened in surprise. She finally lifted her head to see Arthur staring at her in confusion. "Oh, hi Arthur." She waved awkwardly as she ran a hand through her knotty hair nervously. "I'm sorry, I didn't see you there." "It's all right," Arthur retorted nonchalantly with a shrug. "Nice to finally meet you," he said as he reached out his hand for her to shake it. She hurriedly walked towards him and reciprocated the gesture. "Sandra has talked a lot about you," I giggled in amusement. It was nice to see the two people I valued most in my life come together like this. "I'm sorry if I'm disturbing the both of you. I just wanted to talk to Sandra." she said apologetically as she snapped her head towards me and glared at me. Why didn't you tell me? She mouthed in frustration before immediately turning to look back at Arthur. I really don't mind, he said coolly as I walked towards Ellie and slung my arm over her. See? It's fine, I said casually, making her frown. I chuckled at her reaction and led her to the couch. Now tell me all about what you're going through now. She inhaled sharply before she practically poured her heart out to me, explaining everything that has happened to her with this guy recently, from how they met and their first date to the conflict that she is currently facing right now. I don't know if I'm ready yet to be in a relationship, she said sadly. With a sigh, she slumped her back against the couch and let out an exasperated sigh. I've just been single for so long. She held her face with both her hands in defeat. I gently grabbed them away from her face and held her hands in mine. Don't force yourself if you're not comfortable yet, okay? I said, squeezing them lightly. She turned to look at me. There was a hint of sadness in her eyes. But I feel so bad for him, she whined. He's really nice. I pulled her in for a hug and patted her head gently. I understood her situation perfectly. It was just like with me and Arthur when I was not ready yet to fully reveal myself as Sandy, break down my walls and finally let myself be with him. Then tell him that he should wait till you're ready, I said soothingly. If he does wait, then he really is the one then. I opened my mouth to speak to say something more, but I felt my phone vibrate inside of my pocket. I quickly pulled it out to check the notification I've received to see that it was a bunch of people trying to book appointments with me. My jaw dropped to the floor as I felt a surge of happiness. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Ellie took a peek of what I was looking at and jumped up and down in excitement. You're going to be rich, she exclaimed happily, making Arthur turn to look at us. I rigidly showed him the sudden increase of messages. I was still paralyzed from happiness, a smile eternally plastered on my lips. You did it, Arthur said excitedly as happiness glowed inside of him. I cut myself short. I was bursting with joy and I could hardly contain my happiness, but I know that I mustn't forget the people who got me into this situation in the first place. I shook my head and stood up, pulling the both of them suddenly in a tight embrace. No, we did it. Chapter 49, Suspenseful Dinner. Everything was perfect. And there is no almost like last time. It was just perfect. I read before that for good and beneficial circumstances to unfold, they must first fall apart to rebuild a stronger foundation. When a person hits rock bottom, the only place to go is up. In a way, this could be enriching, for it reaffirms that the human spirit cannot be crushed, despite inhospitable conditions. I do agree with this because now that everything is falling into place, all of that suffering that I experienced kind of made sense. I must admit that I almost gave up several times, but I was able to push through it regardless of the circumstances that I am in. These downfalls and the difficulties I have experienced in my life have made room for the new in my life, by letting go of that which no longer served me. Even though before my life may seem like it was falling apart, it was only now that I realized that it was simply laying the framework for its rebuilding exactly as it should. I used to constantly wonder about the what-ifs and if-onlys, and it was great that at some point I learned how to let these go and live in what is happening. A quiet contentment has spread through me as I let out a sigh of relief. Today has been a very busy day for me. I am walking home after doing the makeup and hair of a lot of clients. It's someone's wedding today and I had to do the makeup of the bride and her bridesmaids. It felt amazing to do their makeup and meet new people. I truly loved my job and I am glad that I was able to take the risk. A small smile crept to my lips as I thought about Arthur. I couldn't wait for the day that he would propose to me. It was the happily ever after that Cinderella had with her charming prince. It was my turn to feel that kind of bliss. I shrugged my shoulders, trying to shake the thought of it away. I didn't want to get myself too excited. I might get disappointed. I let out a joyful hum as I decided to focus on my own surroundings. This avenue has a wideness that I love. It's open and reminds me of my walks in the park whenever I tried to clear my head, because things at work started to become too overwhelming for me. I love the cracked sidewalk and the way the cats stalk about, the owners of all they survey. My eyes eat up the green leaves above and the air is like a soft kiss from the earth. Houses line the street, each one a sleepy kingdom, each one somebody's sanctuary. No matter the state of the paintwork or the pride taken in the front yard, they are perfect to me. This is what the city looks like, and there truly is beauty in imperfection. Seeing all of this puts me at ease, lets my soul rest a little easier because I'm not perfect either. And I don't have to be. As I arrived at my apartment, I plopped down on the sofa. I honestly love my job, but you can't deny the exhaustion of standing the whole day, and crouching to lean closer to their faces. I propped my feet on the table to relax and closed my eyes. Flashbacks of what happened today kept replaying inside my mind as a small smile crept to my lips. So nice to talk to different people. I love the way their eyes would light up as I finished their hair and makeup. The look of surprise on their faces really brought a warm feeling to me. My thoughts were abruptly cut off by my cell phone notification. I grabbed my bag beside me to look for my phone. The message was from Arthur. From Arthur. Hi babe. We need to talk. Meet me at L'Atelier at 8 p.m. Reading his message made me feel anxious. What does he need to talk about? Did I do something wrong? I decided to immediately call him to know what this is all about. I dialed his number but he's not picking it up. It made me even more nervous. I tried racking my brain to think about possible things we really do need to talk about. I recalled all the things I did for the past couple of days but no specific incident came to mind that needed to be discussed with him. I breathed heavily trying to calm myself down. Maybe he just wanted to talk about his business. He must be stuck on something that he needed help from me. But then again, why would he want to meet outside? It also didn't make any sense because he specifically wanted to meet in a fancy restaurant. Maybe he's just craving for something, that's why he wanted to eat there. I thought of all the possible reasons as to why he wanted to meet outside. Maybe it isn't that bad. I thought to myself as I pushed all the negative thoughts away. I dragged myself to the bedroom to pick a nice outfit. I retouched my makeup and combed my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror. I straightened the creases on my white dress. I nervously ran a hand through my hair as I thought about meeting Arthur tonight. I still can't help but feel jittery as I think about the purpose of our meeting for tonight. After being satisfied with my appearance, I grabbed my purse and headed out. The ride to the restaurant made me feel even more uneasy as 100 thoughts overwhelmed my head. My hands started sweating as we grew closer to the destination. I sighed heavily before stepping down on the taxi. I'm already here. As I walked inside, I could feel the cool air hitting my skin. It made my skin crawl up. I looked around to spot where Arthur could be. I saw his familiar figure at the farthest table in the room. His back was facing me, so I still had enough time to compose myself. I tried to shake off the nervousness by running a hand through my hair and wiping my sweaty palms on my dress. I breathed in heavily as I started walking towards him. He must have heard the clacking of my heels because he quickly turned around and our eyes met. As soon as I saw him smile, all the nervousness was quickly washed away. He stood up and planted a soft kiss on my lips. You look amazing, he whispered as he pulled away. I fanned my face to stop it from reddening. I took in his appearance, eyeing him up and down. He was wearing a navy blue polo shirt and black jeans. His hair was nice and sleek as usual. You look amazing too. He pulled out the chair for me to sit down. Thank you, I muttered as I sat down. Let's order first. He gestured to the waiter to come and get our order. The man handed us 2 menus and proceeded to talk about their bestsellers. What do you want? He asked me as he flipped through the pages. This restaurant offers a variety of food, so it made me think about which food to have tonight. Maybe I'll have the steak medium rare, I told the waiter as he wrote down my order. I guess I'll just have the aglio e olio, he murmured. Also, we'd like to have the finest red wine, he added before the waiter could repeat our order. As the waiter excused himself, my curiosity got the best of me. I couldn't take being in the dark anymore. I cleared my throat before speaking. So what is that you want to talk about? I asked him. He grinned at me as he excitedly talked about how his day went. He talked about the investors that were to fund his expansion. He enthusiastically told me that all of them were impressed with his proposal, and all of them wanted to start as soon as possible. Right after he was finished, I also talked about how my day went with all the clients I met and chatted with. I feel an overwhelming amount of happiness swell inside of me. It was then it hit me. Is this all he wanted to talk about? I shook my head in disbelief. It can't be.